Welcome to Art with Mrs. Cap, where we are going on a journey through the world of art and the many histories and cultures that influence it. Whether you're a kid or a kid at heart, wanting to learn more about the art world, this is the podcast for you. So join us as we journey through art with Mrs. Cap. Welcome to Art with Mrs. Cap. In this episode, we're looking at Ottoman Empire art. And we're specifically looking at the Suleymaniye Mosque. The Suleymaniye Mosque is an Ottoman imperial mosque, and it's located on the third hill of Istanbul, Turkey. So the mosque was commissioned by its namesake, Suleiman the Magnificent, and designed by his imperial architect, Mimar Sinan. It was built between 1550 and 1557. However, the planning of the mosque began long before 1550, and parts of the complex were not completed until after 1557. So the main construction and when it was dedicated and all that kind of stuff happened between 1550 and 1557. But it was still being constructed after that point. The mosque also contains the mausoleums, these are the tombs, of Suleiman the Magnificent and his wife, Harem Sultan. All right, so let's look at a little background information about the mosque. So the Suleiman Mosque was built on the order of Sultan Suleiman, also known as Suleiman the Magnificent. And of course, as we mentioned before, it was designed by his architect, the imperial architect, Mimar Sinan. The design of the Suleiman Mosque also kind of plays into Suleiman's self-conscious representation of himself as a second Solomon. This is further emphasized in references to the Dome of the Rock, which is built on the site of the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem, as well as Justinian's boast upon completing the Hagia Sophia, Solomon, I have surpassed thee. So Suleiman, in similar magnificence to the preceding structures, asserts Suleiman's historical importance and his belief that he is the second Solomon. And with this structure, even though he's making these statements, it's interesting that it's actually smaller than the Hagia Sophia or the Hagia Sophia, depending on how you want to pronounce that. So it is interesting that he goes through all these lengths to make this statement and this boast, and yet the structure is smaller than the Hagia Sophia. All right, so let's look at the actual architecture and design and so forth of this beautiful building. All right, so with imperial mosques in Istanbul, they typically have the entrance to the mosque where there is a forecourt with a central fountain. This is true with the Suleiman Mosque. It has this, court area that has a central fountain, and this is seen in most designs of mosques, especially during this period and especially in Istanbul itself. All right, so in addition to this, the mosque is also the first building where the Iznik tiles, which include brightly colored tomato red clay under the glaze. It's the first time these are used in a building like this. So that's very significant. We see, when we think of architecture from the Islamic world and from the Ottoman Empire and this part of the world, it's colorful and vibrant and just beautiful patterns of tile work. And so it's interesting that the Suleiman Mosque is the first time where Iznik tiles include this bright tomato red clay under the glaze. So it's very, very interesting and cool. All right, so at the four corners of the courtyard, there are 4 minarets. So minaret is it's a common structure and style with mosques. So that's kind of one of, especially in this part of the world, that's one of those things that sticks out and identifies it as a mosque, are those minarets. So there are 2 taller minarets. They have 3 galleries, and they rise to the height of 209 feet without their lead caps. They are 249 feet, including the caps. 4 minarets were used for the mosques endowed by a sultan. Okay, so minarets are common in mosque architecture, but the use of 4 minarets means that it was endowed by a sultan. Princes and princesses could construct 2 minarets and others only 1. So if you look at, if you see like mosques here in the United States, I know I've seen a few when traveling to different areas, they have a single minaret. And then in photographs and stuff, we'll see mosques that have, only 2 minarets. But if they have 4, that means they were commissioned by a sultan. So that's just something interesting to note that kind of tells you a little bit about the mosque. The minarets have a total, so the 4 minarets on this particular mosque have a total of 10 galleries, which tradition indicates that Suleiman the First was the 10th Ottoman Sultan. So here again, he's legitimizing his rule. He is using symbolism to speak to who he is and, all of those components to legitimize his rule and to establish who he is, to speak to him, believing that he is the second Solomon. All of these things are working together. The main dome is 174 feet high and has a diameter of 86.9 feet, which is exactly half the height. At the time it was built, the dome was the highest in the Ottoman Empire when measured from sea level, but it was still lower from its base and smaller in diameter than that of the Hagia Sophia. All of the symbolism was used purposefully to further legitimize Suleiman's rule. So we're talking about that a lot. This was a building to legitimize his rule. So let's move into the interior space of this magnificent structure. And the interior of the mosque is almost a square. Not quite, but is very close to being a square. It's about 194 feet by 190 feet. So it's 4 feet off from being a perfect square. And it forms a single vast space. The interior decoration consists of stained glass windows, beautiful tile work in blue, turquoise, red, black, and white. And it also includes the Iznik tile calligraphic roundels with text from the Quran. All right, the white marble mihrab, which is the niche in a wall of a mosque that's pointing towards Mecca, and the mimbar, which is the pulpit for the imam to deliver sermons from, are also simple in design, and the woodwork is restrained, with simple designs of ivory and mother of pearl. So that's just kind of a glimpse on the inside of this structure. Again, it was damaged by a great fire in 1660. It was restored by Sultan Mehmed IV. Part of the dome collapsed during an earthquake in 1766. And then subsequent repairs to the damage left the original decoration of Sinan. And recent cleaning has shown that Sinan experimented first with blue before making red the dominant color of the dome. And then during World War I, the courtyard was used as a weapons depot. And some ammunition ignited. and the mosque suffered another fire. So it wasn't until 1956 that this structure was fully restored again. So for 462 years, Suleymaniye Mosque was the largest mosque in the city until it was surpassed by the Kamlika Mosque in 2019. So that was just recently, 2019. It was surpassed and no longer the largest mosque in Istanbul. To this day, the Suleymaniye Mosque is one of the best known sites of Istanbul, and from its location on the third hill, it gives amazing views of the city around the Golden Horn. So if you've ever seen like movies that are set in Istanbul or anything like that, almost certainly you've seen the Suleymaniye Mosque in the cityscape, in the views of the city. You've seen that, or you've seen the Hagia Sophia, or both. So it is definitely like an icon, kind of like the Eiffel Tower is for Paris. Suleymaniye Mosque is that way for Istanbul. So that concludes our discussion today on the Suleymaniye Mosque. I hope you enjoyed this as we learn about Ottoman Empire architecture, and I will see you next time on Art with Mrs. Cap. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Be sure to subscribe and check out more episodes as we travel through the world of art and art history to have a better understanding of our own ties to the culture and history of humanity.